Number 7 ranked welterweight Ian Machado Garry has been punished in the court of public opinion since August without a fair trial. His crime? Being a good man. Meet Ian Garry, an undefeated rising contender from Ireland with aspirations to impress and dominate the world of MMA the way his countryman Conor McGregor had. He is tall, with an impressive reach, very hard to touch, and sports very technical striking that is both unpredictable and dangerous. The Irish Adesanya, if you will. Ian started to stand out in the headlines after back-to-back knockouts over Keenan Song and Daniel Rodriguez, and he seemed like an exciting prospect that was building an impressive fan base, garnering massive cheers in the States from local fans as well as eager countrymen who flew to support him. On social media, Ian came across as arrogant and self-important, and he definitely had his fair share of comment section critics. But that is expected in any MMA comment section, and generally speaking, Ian seemed to be on an express to stardom, but all of that would change. This all starts at the presser for UFC 292, when long-standing welterweight gatekeeper Neil Magny made what the public assumed to be a joke. Trying to create hype for the fight, Neil disparagingly said,
"There's a whooping that you'll give your son now, to kind of teach him life a little bit. Being a father, I've become quite accustomed to that kind of whooping, and that's what I'm looking forward to giving on Saturday."
Seemingly attempting to use his age and experience as reasoning for why he would best Ian Garry in a fight, the media ate this up, with popular and wide-reaching news sites like MMA Junkie putting out headlines like, "Neil Magny looking forward to issuing father-like ass-whooping to Ian Machado Garry at UFC 292. However, Ian, who is also father to his son, was completely disturbed and offended by the implications of child abuse in the statement, and he made it loudly known at the press conference the following day, calling on the media not to ask Neil any questions so he could sit and think about what he said. Ian then went on to give Neil the ass-whipping of a lifetime, making Neil hop on one foot half the time from shattering leg kicks and completely treating him like a punching bag for 15 minutes. Ian also showed zero respect to Neil, flipping him off between rounds and leaving the blood bad in his post-fight interview. Ian was criticized for not finishing the fight, but it was an overwhelmingly dominant victory, and I think Mike Marlotte just made a good case for why you shouldn't try to force a finish on Magny when you have the fight in the bag. For me, this was as successful the story of this fight could have played out. Watching this was like a bully beatdown, because I heard what Ian heard. A fighter joked about beating his son, and then another fighter said, "Hey man, that's not cool," and proceeded to beat the fuck out of him. That story will work for me every time. I think every time someone beats their kid, we should put them in a cage with Ian Garry for a few rounds. As a former kid, I thought it was an excellent night for MMA. And boom, all of a sudden, I'm out here watching YouTube replays and Googling Ian Garry to see if his next fight is getting announced. And that's when I realized the rest of the world was not saying the same thing I was. Overnight after the presser, before the fight even happened, the public had gone completely nuclear on Garry. According to the public, Neil had just made an innocent joke at the presser, and by using Neil's statement against him, Garry was making something out of nothing and accusing Neil of being an abusive father to be a quote-unquote white knight. Ian's comment sections went from hyped-up fanboys with a few hecklers to a sheer barrage of hate. Sometime after all this, Neil Magny revealed that he was in the middle of a custody battle for his son, and that Ian retorting to Neil's statement and blowing it out of proportion was affecting this custody battle. Magny also criticized himself for making the statement that allowed Garry to make the rebuttal, but it was ultimately his belief that it was Ian's statements that rose concern within his court proceedings, and not so much the statement that Neil himself had made about, the son whipping. Here's where I get a little lost. The public has decided that Magny was joking and that Ian is a party pooper who ruined all the fun. But Neil Magny never actually said, "I was joking." The overwhelming popular opinion just decided that, and nobody asked. Like, for real, nobody cared to ask the dude in a custody battle over his son if the statement he made about beating up his son was a joke. And instead we just hung the dude who didn't find it funny. Or, as for other commenters, just backed child abuse. There was a lot of that going around too. Okay, so it's about 4 months later. The public is still sour on Ian Garry, who is preparing to face Vicente Luque, a man who was just one Bilal Muhammad away from fighting for the title before he got Bilal Muhammaded. This was a big match, but nobody seemed to be talking about it because it comes out that Ian is married to a MILF, and that previous to their marriage, that MILF, Layla, had published a book titled How to Be a Wag. Now, I was a little behind on the lingo here, but wag is a niche modern buzz phrase abbreviating wives and girlfriends, and describes women who seek, date, and marry successful athletes as well as help such athletes harness their own potential. If I'm being honest, I really don't understand the big scandal here. During the lonelier periods of my life, I might have found myself clicking on a YouTube video titled How to Talk to Gym Girls, or How to Get My Crush to Like Me Back, or How to Be Taller. And usually in these videos, a dude who puts cocaine in his protein shake tells me his take on how to project the confidence and charm it takes to achieve romantic success. So far what I've gathered is you gotta be a 6'3" German looking dude named Juan, but I cannot for the life of me see how that is any different than some lonely bookworm girl picking up a copy of How to Get Athletes to Marry You. I have not read through this book, but I can confidently assume that nowhere within the book does it instruct women to rob their new athlete husband of his will and soul. Nevertheless, the public goes ballistic on this, and the usual suspects Colby Covington and Sean Strickland go in on the Garrys, with Strickland calling Layla a predator and Colby straight up calling on his fans to sexually disparage her.
For all the people out there, how many of you guys have Ian Garry's wife?
And sexually disparage her they did. It got bad, guys. Even Froggy Fresh got in on it. It was like watching a couple get chewed up by country rapping piranhas. This new and 10 times multiplied tsunami of public disgust became too much for Ian and Layla, and the Machado Garrys turned their comment sections off. To make matters worse, amidst the influx of cyberbullying, Ian and his infant son fall sick, and Ian is forced to back out of his fight against Vicente Luque. Ian is now completely disgraced in the eyes of the people. It is assumed he feigned sickness to avoid a press conference with Colby Covington. This leaves Ian profoundly frustrated, and he is interviewed saying he is furious, that he'd intended to respond to all the public hate with a statement win and a searing post-fight call-out, and that his chance to defend himself and his wife in the court of public opinion was ripped away from him. In a week where Colby Covington sexually harassed Ian's wife, told Leon Edwards his late father was in hell, called Stephen Thompson a pedophile for funsies, and put on one of the most boring performances in welterweight history, somehow Ian once again emerges MMA public enemy number 1. Some time passes, as it always does. Ian gets back in the octagon and squeaks out a decision against Jeff Neal. At any point, if Ian was to pull out a spectacular finish like he did against D-Rod, he would likely be alleviated of a lot of the negative public opinion, but instead he fights a technical and close match. He then immediately calls for none other than Colby Covington, who, again, is coming off the most uninspired loss in welterweight title fight history. Colby responded to Ian in an almost typical Colby video, minus the hired women to shine him up. He doubled down on sexually disrespecting and harassing Layla. He called himself Donald Trump's favorite fighter, even though Donald Trump left his last fight early out of embarrassment, and he gave Ian Garry 3 conditions under which he will accept the fight, saying that in order to fight him, Ian would have to A. turn his comment sections back on, so that Colby fans could sexually harass his wife, B. sit in a corner while Layla got on her knees and publicly begged Colby for a fight, and finally C. Ian would have to watch as Colby shot a promotional video with a scantily clad Layla under his arm where he normally hires foreign sex workers to be. I hate all of this, but Colby fans ate it up like Lucky Charms and called it the best call-out ever. Now I'm not even gonna get into how disgusting I find this brand of trash talk. It is the lowest form of marketing, and it is the only thing keeping Colby Covington relevant, but that is for another video. I'm sure if you clicked on this one, you have heard of the great and undefeated JLP Sonnen. And if you've watched a few Chael videos, you've probably heard him talk about a tactic athletes use called pricing yourself out. This is basically when an athlete agrees to fight another athlete, but only for an unreasonable amount of money. For instance, if I say, I'll fight Umar Nurmagomedov for $80 million, that's called pricing myself out of a fight. Whether you say it to the public or the matchmakers, if you're demanding an amount of money you know is unreasonable to give you, you might as well be saying no. And that is all I hear in Colby's response. He's basically saying, sure, I'll fight Ian Garry if his wife begs me and undresses on camera and rubs up on me, and Ian reads every single one of my 14-year-old aspiring school shooter fans' commentary about the entire situation. And that might as well be a big, resounding no. I don't want to fight him. I'm scared. I don't see any other way to interpret that, no matter how gross Colby makes this. But rather than stoop to Colby's level, Ian proposes another idea he calls an I quit match, meaning whoever loses has to retire. That's the entire condition. And reading that, I thought to myself, well, that's game over. Because Ian didn't just call Colby out for everything he's worth, he also put his entire career on the line. All of his aspirations to be the next Conor McGregor, the double champ, an undefeated fighter, a single loss might not hurt so much, but fuck it, he's willing to put all that success that got him his treasured wife, tens of millions of potential dollars, his legacy as a fighter in the pot of a single fight. That's cold as fuck. But once again, I find myself screaming into the void in disagreement with the entire planet here. People are saying that Ian's callout was cringy and evanescent of a WWE callout, which is a weird thing for Colby fans to dislike when he is the most evanescent of WWE person, human being on Earth. The dude's entire persona is a character. The dude probably got the idea to be Colby Covington watching the WWE. So here we are. I cannot fathom how we got here, but the single most hated man in a company that openly employs groomers, domestic abusers, dude who ram their cars into pregnant ladies and then leave those pregnant ladies to die, but then go back to grab the cash, but then leave the pregnant lady to die again. And we have chosen Ian Garry to be public enemy number one because he is intolerant of child abuse, he is in a successful marriage with someone who wrote a book on how to have a successful marriage exactly like that, and he is willing to risk his entire career and permanent reputation on a single fight against a more experienced fighter. I think the world is backwards. I think Ian Garry is one of the better representatives we have in this sport. He is also one of the more sensitive and offendable personalities for sure, but he's vegan, man, and vegans are sensitive. They don't get the fucking nutrition that makes your soul die. Besides, he doesn't go around trashing anyone's wife. The only time he got personal is when he directly suspected the dude of child abuse because the dude implicated himself in child abuse. I think Garry is a beast who sticks to his values, and I think we should stop rewarding fighters like Colby with the favor of the narrative simply for being misogynist. Especially when he has a more boring fight style than Bilal Muhammad. Come on now. When Ian Machado Garry came onto the scene, I did not see that face and think, in a year from now, I'm going to be making a video just backing that dude to the max. But I hate seeing people dragged through the mud, dude. Especially well-intended people. I see a well-intended man here, and I couldn't sit silent any longer. My sport is flooded with a one-way stream of hate towards a couple that does not deserve it. But what do you think? Am I a white knight soy boy cuck like Ian Garry? Would Colby Covington beat me to a pulp? Did I convince you? Are you with me? Do you like my unpopular opinions? Because I got a lot of them in MMA. Well, that about wraps it up, dudes. I hope you're having a good week. Make sure to take care of your mental health. Don't take shit from your boss. Stay hydrated. I hope someone hugs you this week. Pay attention to your cats. I'll see you next time.